is just fantastic. Captain's Log, Subject 211005.2. With issues concerning food now resolved, we've hired a quack to find out why inmates are so keen to put things up their bottom. I personally believe they've developed an addiction, but the quack has yet to be convinced. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number 091, Tina Gonzalez, to the ISO cubes. To start this, I want to make a little statement. In any occupation, those working for a company and/or establishment have a responsibility, which makes every occupation very different in not only how they work, but how they, the employee, handle their duties. This is relevant, very relevant, vastly more relevant than any of those content creators, old and new, who constantly misuse the word relevant. As this series is the Halls of Injustice, we would be remiss if we did not address those that broke the law that also happened to work within the sector of imprisonment. So ideally those that have misused their power position for selfish reasons. It is with that in mind we now insert Tina Gonzalez, a 26-year-old former corrections officer from Fresno, who worked within the corrections industry from 2016 to 2019. She was also married at some point, but this marriage had ended during her time in corrections. I'm sure we'll find out the reason why soon enough, although if it isn't because of what I think it is, it just happens to be quite the coincidence. During an investigation by the Fresno Sheriff's Office and the Internal Affairs Division, cell inspections of other inmates had yielded some rather interesting results, one of which included a cell phone. This came to light because of allegations that had been made in fact against her, which did lead, initially, to Tina Gonzalez resigning following an interview with detectives in December of 2019. It is adding that as a corrections officer she was actually employed by the Sheriff's Office. So at the conclusion of this investigation, which happened to be on May the 1st, Tina Gonzalez was arrested because they had found that she had done a few things that breached many of the rules and laws. This would include supplying gang members with messages from other areas of the prison, supplying them with razors, which are considered contraband. Granted, as part of her duties, it is her job to actually supply them in the first place. But of course there is a certain amount of restriction with that. She was also in contact with one particular inmate via a cell phone, the very cell phone we earlier referenced. But there was one additional thing she was doing, one additional thing, that might have gotten her into a lot more trouble because she went out of her way to make sure she could get this. And that was get the peen from the inmate. To do this, she would cut a hole in her trousers so they could get in, and it wasn't private in the slightest, unless your version of privacy is in front of an audience of 11 people. So 11 other inmates watched her get railed by another. Free on the spot pornography. Fantastic. I want to insert this one little detail now. Initially people were after a sentence of 3 years and 8 months in prison, if found guilty. And there is no information as to where the tip-off came that they were dating, or they had had intimate relations. Only that an inmate was given a cell phone. Tina Gonzalez's former boss, the Assistant Sheriff Steve McThomas, said after pointing out that it's a fairly depraved thing to have sex in front of 11 other inmates, that he had hoped that she would feel responsible and show some remorse after she was caught. But in fact, the complete opposite was what actually happened next, with her continuing to call the inmate to have phone sex and even boasting of her crimes to them and showing zero remorse, with McThomas being quoted as saying she took an oath which she betrayed and in doing so endangered her co-workers' lives, but she has shown no remorse. She continually calls and has sexually explicit conversations with the inmate in question and boasts about the crimes she carried out. Within that statement there was a very important point made, and it concerns the safety of her co-workers and of fellow inmates, and there's a lot of truth to that. First of all, by supplying raises to someone who may well be gang affiliated, you have endangered the lives of others who may be from an opposite or opposing gang, or just people they want to harm arbitrarily. By relaying messages, the same applies here. By providing a cell phone, you've given that person a taste of freedom and negated the entire purpose of prison. By giving them a cell phone, they, if they are high enough in the rankings, can contact the outside world and run their gang from prison, or take orders from their gang from the outside and bring it inside, continuing gang activities, which is incredibly dangerous. The point of prison is to be there to serve time, not to live in luxury. A cell phone is a luxury that you should never be granted in a prison, because you cannot control it, which defeats prison. As far as endangering your co-workers, which you did do, those same inmates that you've been nicing, either by letting them watch you get drilled or by relaying their messages, will use you as a shield and as a weapon so as to get to other officers, to break the system down so they can control it, because they themselves don't want to be controlled, which no one does really, unless it concerns coronavirus, in which case apparently everyone does. But in the case of this, because that's not relevant in the slightest, I just want to be a dick for a second. In the case of this, you were there to do a job, and your job was to ensure those inmates did their time, not for you to get your rocks off and enjoy it enough to go back for more and to continue this after you were arrested. The prosecutors were seeking 15 months, so yes, the sentence had gone down a considerable amount from the initial 3 years. But eventually, the defenders of Tina Gonzalez managed to haggle it all the way down. So yes, she was found guilty, and with it we get a sentence. 7 months and 2 years probation. She goes to prison for 7 months, which I think we can all agree here is quite laughable. No one's laughing, but it is a laughable sentence regardless. Now, the reason they managed to get the sentence as low as they did was because of a mitigating factor. Let's all take a moment, everyone. Brace yourselves. This one's a doozy. She was a vulnerable woman because she had just ended her marriage. Now, she had no criminal record, so I can understand that being used in her favour. But the former, not so much. Why? Well, isn't it obvious enough? And while I can truly and fully understand a coping mechanism, I don't think this one counts. So when the judge even agrees with it and believes in the best and thinks that this person can in fact redeem herself, I think you need to be struck off. And as this involves a former corrections officer, yeah, we're going to put a chastity belt on her. She ain't getting any. We're also going to make sure her mouth is sewn up. She'll be fed through a pipe up her nose. Just in case she tries to do anything with her hands as well, don't worry. We'll remove those and give them back to her when she leaves in 3 years. Because that's my sentence. I'm going to go with the original one because I'm a dick. Now, as we've reached the conclusion of another episode, I'd like to know what you all think. Please do let me know in the comments down below, smash the like if you enjoyed, and share this video about. I hope you'll have a fantastic day, and thank you all very much for listening.